Hello, everyone. This is your host, James Andrew Britton Hearn. Welcome to the Real Times podcast series, where I, along with special guests, will be discussing current issues and how we can positively move forward during the new normal. Today's guest conducts the Andrews University Wind Symphony and is responsible for teaching music education courses for the Music Teacher Certification Program. And he was my professor, director, and advisor during my last 3 years at Andrews University. He obtained his master's degrees in instrumental conducting from Central Michigan University and undergraduate degrees in clarinet performance and music education from Andrews University. And he recently obtained a doctorate degree in musical arts in music education at Boston University and continues to do research in the area of self-determination, theory, and basic psychological needs. He firmly believes that music brings you closer to God in a way nothing else can. And he is passionate about helping mentor the next generation of Adventist music teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Graves. Hello, Dr. Graves.
Hello. Nice to be with you, James. Thanks for inviting me today.
So first question, how are you and are you safe and healthy?
I'm doing well. We're doing well here in Michigan. We've been staying at home like most people for the last, almost 5 months now. And of course, both you and I had a little scare there back in March, both being exposed to Sandy Patty at Andrews.
Yes.
She had the coronavirus there, and we both had to isolate ourselves for a few days. But as far as I know, I never got it, and I don't think you did either.
Nope.
So, yeah, our family's doing well. My wife and I are expecting our third child any day now. So,
Really?
a little boy. Yeah, so
Awesome.
We're eagerly awaiting that and hoping it doesn't happen on the first day of classes, but actually the due date is the third day of school, so we'll see how things go. So yeah, we're doing well.
Awesome. So, first question for you. What are the most important pieces of advice that you would give to new teachers who are in the field right now during this time?
Yeah, well, I guess the most important piece of advice is to be flexible because no one prepared for this. You know, I've been teaching K through university level now for about 15 years and never encountered anything like this. This is just, you keep hearing the word unprecedented, and that certainly is true.
Yes.
So being flexible and not being super dogmatic about what you're planning to do for the year, because you just don't know. You know, we'll talk more about it, but about what we're planning on doing here at Andrews. But you know, we're planning to start in person, but I'm fully expecting that could change any day. You never know, and especially for music teachers, that's frustrating because we trained to do a very specific thing.
Yes.
In a specific way. You know, we're used to. Most of us derive most of our pleasure from teaching and directing ensembles and things, and lots of in-person personal contact, very close personal contact. So the idea of being virtual for another year is pretty frightening. But that being said, I think it is so important that we keep music education in our schools, because there's lots of administrators that are saying, hey, well, you can't have an ensemble, so I guess we don't need music this year, which is sad. And so we have a lot of educating to do of parents and fellow teachers and administrators to make sure that music, in whatever form that takes this year, stays in the curriculum. So being flexible, that would be a great piece of advice. And if you're a brand new teacher, this would be advice I'd give in any situation, not just this situation, but that is realizing that you don't know everything.
Yes, that's so true.
Just because you just graduated with that and you have that fancy diploma you can stick on your wall now, doesn't mean you're an expert. You know, I don't even consider myself an expert, and I'm teaching at the university level now. I'm learning new things every day, and so don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, talk to
Absolutely,
people
yeah.
that have been in the business for longer than you and are doing cool and innovative things, and surround yourself with people that can support you. Musicians often get a bad rap for having big egos,
Yeah.
and, and I would just say try to push that aside. You know, to set your ego aside and learn as much as you can from people. So
Yeah, you said something about learning. I remember it was around my sophomore or even junior year at Andrews when I was in one of the classes, and one of the teachers over there in the education department says, as teachers, once you graduate, you still keep learning, that it doesn't end there. And I remember because coming in into that class, I thought, okay, or just in general, coming in as a student to Andrews, I thought, okay, after I graduate, that's it. That whatever I learned, that's it. That nothing else will be new to me afterwards. But that I've learned now throughout my time that it's a continuous process.
yeah,
That your learning continues years after you're done.
yeah. In fact, some of your most important lessons in teaching have yet to be learned. Um, you know, someone in your position who hasn't actually taught full time yet, you know, you're just entering that world. Um, you've got a set of knowledge and skills that you've acquired in your undergraduate years, but um, you don't have a lot of practical experience yet. You know, you had student teaching, though interrupted it as it was,
Yes.
and a few bits and pieces there throughout your college career. But really, being in a classroom full time on your own, the kinds of lessons you learn there, especially in your first year, are crucial. And I'll add to that your first year can be quite frustrating. It won't go perfectly. And I don't know what the exact statistic is, but a lot of first year teachers quit after their first year,
I learned that in
which is,
first days, yes. In
which
first
is
days,
sad.
that course, yeah.
A lot of it has to do with classroom management and not having those
Yes.
skills and just kind of getting overwhelmed by the students. But in today's world, there's a lot of different reasons. You know, the pandemic would be one reason. A lot of people are just hanging their hat up and saying, "Hey, why do I want to deal with all this?"
Exactly. Yeah.
So stick it out. Definitely stick it out. You know, um, my mentor in undergrad, Mr. Mitchell, who was also your teacher for a
Yes.
bit, told us at one point, you know, at least teach for 4 years. Stick it out through at least 4 years, because then by then you'll have had a full cycle of students, say in your high school, or in your middle school, fifth or eighth grade, or ninth or 12th grade, and so by that fourth year, all these students are yours. You won't have any of the issues of, oh, we liked the past director better and all this, which you'll definitely run into. It happens everywhere.
Yes. Yes.
Loyalties lie with the previous person, especially if you follow someone who's popular. Um, but after 4 years, you can start to evaluate where you're at, and hopefully by then you'll have settled in and be enjoying your work more than maybe the first year.
Okay. So which leads us now to our next question. Now, throughout the nation, it's there's always been now going back and forth between whether schools should open or reopen. But this one specifically for schools that do reopen. Do you believe that schools that plan to reopen in person will already have a game plan in set to incorporate guidelines so that students will be safe in musical ensembles such as band and choir, and or maybe other things like handbell choir and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Well, the answer to that is it really depends on on your district. Um, if you follow some of the stuff online, you know, we've got music teachers being let go because they've decided there's no music
Mm.
this year. That's the horrible far end of the spectrum. You've got the more typical situation where they're saying this you can't do this safely, so you're going to be teaching music theory this year. Or you figure out some other way to teach music besides ensembles. That's pretty common. I'm hearing that a lot.
Mm. Okay.
Um, and and then there are a number of cases where the administration is kind of leaning on the music teacher to figure out a way to safely do band and or choir. And that's difficult. I'm in that situation personally. Andrew's administration has not said you can't do this. They kind of recognize, at least at the university level, that these are requirements for a degree. You have to be in an ensemble. So we have to figure out a way to offer them. But the ball's in my court to figure out how to do that safely. One of the big resources for that, excuse me, is a study at the University of Colorado. I don't know if you've been following that. It's being supported by a lot of different music education organizations, spearheaded by the College Band Directors Association and the National Federation of High School. And I can't remember. NHFS is the acronym. Anyway, it's a high school theater, music, sports, any extra. They're not extracurricular. You and I know that, but we kind of, sometimes they get called extracurricular things. So those two organizations have sponsored some research that's going on in a lab in Colorado, where they're testing the aerosols that come out of people's mouths and instruments.
Oh, okay.
It seems, at least from what we're learning more and more about the coronavirus, is that it spreads most commonly through aerosol.
Yeah, through droplets, yes.
Droplets, but aerosol is even slightly different in that it's smaller. It's molecular.
Ah,
It's
okay.
not. We're not talking about like water that you can see flying through the air. These are very, very small. And some, maybe you saw some of those early videos online where they were like blowing smoke through clarinets and things, and like, oh yeah, nothing comes out the end. Well, those weren't very scientifically based, unfortunately. And so actually quite a bit of aerosol does come out the instrument. So theoretically, a flute player or a clarinet player could be positive, have the coronavirus and be just spewing that into the room.
Oh boy.
Which is not obviously good.
Yeah.
Singing, same thing. Singing is
Yes.
actually
Mm-hmm.
one of the most concerning because, there's nothing in the way. When you play a trumpet or a clarinet, at least it's going into an instrument first,
Yes.
and then getting spewed about. But with singing, there's nothing. It's just out in front of you. So some of that study is ongoing. It will be going through into December, but they've had 2 rounds of preliminary results that they've released, and I can send you the link so you can look up some of this stuff. Basically, the short version of their recommendations are that if at all possible, you should be rehearsing outside. If you can't rehearse outside, you should be inside in a very large space with adequate air filtration, like HEPA filters, the high efficiency filters. If you can't have that, then indoors. Always spaced, by the way. The recommendation is at least 6 feet on all sides for everybody. Trombone players are supposed to have 9 feet. 9 feet. That's the current recommendation from the CDC. So obviously that's challenging. I mean, you think about how much space that takes. So if you don't have HEPA filters, then the next level down of safety would be to have lots of fresh air being moved into the room. So, over the last 20 years, we've been trying to design really high efficient buildings that don't have a lot of fresh air coming into them. So we kind of need to throw that on its head and try to replace the air quickly in a space. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Additionally, and this is going to be tough, but the recommendations are that players wear masks while playing. Split masks. So you take a mask, you can just take a surgical mask and cut a slit right here, and put the trumpet mouthpiece in through it, and you play with a mask. And also covers for bells. So putting a cover. I mean, trumpet is pretty straightforward actually. This one's it's not too bad. Just cut a piece of fabric, put some elastic, sew some elastic on it, and stick it on the end of the bell. And the research shows that there's a lot less aerosol that's coming out at that point.
Excellent.
So those are the things that are being recommended for singers. There are They're of course recommending masks for singers, which is just
Yes,
horrible for
of
singing.
course. Yeah.
But I know Mr. Reed is looking into some of these special singing masks that they're bigger, so you're not singing straight into a mask, but they kind of come out a little bit. The face shield bit has been found to not be very effective, so it's got to be a mask. So those are the things we're working on to be as safe as possible. One part of me goes, man, this seems like an awful lot of work for for something that doesn't seem like is going to be a big issue. But think about the Wind Symphony. We've got a number of young students who might be,
Yes.
they could be asymptomatic and not know it, and then we've got a fair number of older folks that play with us.
Yes.
They'd be a very high risk for that. So my personal plan is for at least the month of August and probably far into September, we're going to be rehearsing outside the Howard, out on the grass.
Oh, wow.
In a
Awesome.
shaded area there. Yeah, that's the plan. The choir is going to be in the Howard, or the singers. He's limiting it to, I think, and maybe your interview, Mr. Zork, too. He can tell you all about it. But I think he's limiting it to about 25 singers.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to be spaced out all the way around the balcony level with like
Wow,
20,
that's
20
amazing.
feet in between. Same with the orchestra. Orchestra obviously meets at night, so they can't be outside. So they will be spacing throughout the hall, and the band will do the same. If there's bad weather, we'll just space ourselves out. But if you think about it, I'll probably have a slightly smaller group for that reason this year, maybe around 50, 55. But 55 people, and each person needs, 36 square feet, 6 by 6. That stage is not set up well for that. So we're going to have people sitting everywhere to make that work. So those are our plans. But every school is different, and it really depends what, on your community, whether people think it's safe or not.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I feel entirely comfortable myself. But, if I was maybe 60 or 70 years old with some underlying conditions, I probably would think differently.
Yeah. Which brings us to our next question. If it's not possible to do all these things or even have performances in person, would you consider doing virtual concerts for HPAC? And also I'll add to that, would you also consider, if you do teach lessons, would you also consider continuing virtual instrumental lessons?
I mean, of course, there's really no other option. The music faculty here at Andrews, we've been meeting a lot. Normally, the music faculty, we would not see each other all summer, but we've had nearly weekly faculty meetings on Zoom to hash out these issues. And for instance, Mr. Reed is going to be probably teaching voice lessons in the early teen loft to have a much bigger space.
Yes.
Because our studio spaces are way too small.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's entirely possible that he'll be doing a number, not just him, all of our teachers will be doing some form of virtual lessons for some people, because there are students that aren't coming back. We've got international students that can't make it here because of all the regulations and stuff going on right now, who are going to be at least doing the first semester virtually. So they'll be taking lessons virtually. The Howard isn't going to have any concerts for the first semester.
Okay.
We're not going to have any big public concerts, I'll put it that way. We're still debating whether we can have a small number of, maybe students or community members come. But most likely what will happen is that like the Howard series and stuff like that, those have all been canceled, any of the big stuff. The ensemble concerts will still happen, most likely just in an empty hall and live streamed. So a virtual concert. I'm probably going to do our first concert outside the Wind Symphony, so that we can have an audience, because that'll work. I don't know where exactly on campus we'll do that, but we do the flag raising ceremony every year for alumni. So my thought is that in lieu of that, because they cancel alumni weekend as well, we'll just start a little earlier and have a full concert outside, and people can socially distance and listen and have a good time. So that's our plans, and we are ready to pivot on a dime as necessary to all virtual. If it does go completely virtual, there are no good ways to do virtual choirs and bands live. The only thing you
Of
can
course,
do
yes.
are these recorded types of things.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, myself and students, we're getting tired of it.
Yeah.
Like, it was fun and exciting the first time, but even like the Wind Symphony one that I did,
Yes.
I, you know, I asked people over and over and over to record
Yeah.
videos, and I think I got 12 people in the end to
Yeah.
record videos out of 70. So it's very difficult to get, people participating because people are busy and it takes time to produce them. And there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into it. And the end product, we were lucky, of course. We kind of did a fake one we used our live recording from before the pandemic and sort of put our recordings on top of that. If you don't have that option, you really have to have a really good sound engineer to help you make something that sounds anything like it should. And even then, it's not the same.
Yeah.
So if we do go all virtual, I will say I don't have a wonderful backup plan, unfortunately, for that. I don't know that anybody does.
Yeah.
To be quite honest. So.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to our last two questions with this one. What is unique about music during this time in our world right now? Do you think that, in what sense do you think is music teaching unique?
Well, and all teachers would probably say this too, but I think music is particularly important that you have that in-person personal connection, when you're teaching. A lot of our educational system has moved to remote types of things already before this. There are colleges that are all online, asynchronous. My doctoral degree was largely that way. We would do most of our work on our own. We'd meet, via Zoom and other types of things a few times a week. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do really well that way. You can teach a history class or an English class. You can get English, you can get that feedback for an English paper via Zoom or via, a marked up paper that gets sent back to you. And the quality of the instruction, I think, can stay quite high in those situations. Music performance, there are a lot of areas of music theory, history that could be done remotely, I think, without too much issue. But, and we are, by the way, I'm teaching theory this semester, and I'm going to be teaching remotely for some students. So it works. But music performance especially, it's just not the same. It's something that you do in a community of fellow musicians, right? Anything creative in that regard, especially live creativity. It's not just music. This would be theater and sports, those sorts of things that have to be done with other people. Music is unique in that we've been especially hard hit there, and it's not just in music ed. Chicago Symphony just announced no concerts at least through December. And I've got a friend who plays in the Chicago Symphony, and they're out of work through December, and that's happening. And that's one of the top orchestras in the world. Think what's happening all the way down the performing arts scale, down to your local groups. The municipal band in St. Joe, Michigan that I play in the summer, no concerts this summer. There's been almost zero live music for 5 months, and with no end in sight, at least in the United States. So certainly music is unique in that regard, and it makes it that much more challenging for us to find ways to keep those connections with our students. I'm particularly concerned that say we do go all remote, we start school in person, the virus gets worse in the first couple of weeks, or someone tests positive and they have to shut the campus down, yada yada. Could very easily happen, right?
Yeah.
And then no more Wind Symphony. What's going to happen to all those students who, they were maybe on the fence about joining band, but I talked them into it.
Yeah.
They were enjoying it, but then it quits. So second semester, do you think they're going to come back? I don't know. If we go remote, a lot of those students will fall through the cracks, and that's happening at the high school level too. Like, oh, where are all my next Wind Symphony students coming from? Well, I don't know. If there's no high school band for a year and a half, the numbers of students participating is going to go way down. So those are unique challenges for us that don't have easy solutions. If I had the solution, I'd be a millionaire. No, I just don't.
One of the, if there's, thank you once again for sharing that. But I think for me, one of the most unique things for me that I've seen, I'm pretty sure you remember Monica, right?
Yeah.
She recently shared on Instagram. I don't know how they did it, but I love it so much. They were able to still have band camp, but it was done in a it was done in an awesome way. Socially distanced, wearing masks, but it seemed like everyone was organized and that they were still having fun. And when I saw that, it really gave me hope that hey, things like that can still be possible for big bands and stuff.
Yeah, well, marching band, because it's largely outside, is one of those areas that I think probably can move forward in a cautious way fairly easily. But your choirs and your orchestras and things are going to have a lot more challenging time with that. And marching band only goes so long.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was just down the road, Bridgman. Yeah, a good friend of mine, Cliff Reppart's the band director there. That's where Monica went to high school, so she helps out with them. Yeah, I saw some of those videos online. 6 feet apart, everybody spaced out. It's a different kind of setup, but yeah, they looked like they were having a good time.
All right, so this is our last question for today. What are the educational benefits that you see that can come out of what we're all going through? And this is both for teachers and for students.
Right. Well, there are certainly a lot of negatives. We've talked about some of those. So looking for positives is a little challenging. I'd say one possible positive is that we as music teachers might rethink a little bit our complete and total focus on performance, and look into other ways of teaching music, things that we might neglect, things like, music theory or more solo creative things like composing a piece of music or critically analyzing music, that sort of thing. Lots of those areas do get kind of left by the wayside when we devote our entire focus to ensembles. And so there is an opportunity there, and I'm seeing some of my colleagues who aren't being allowed to have their ensembles start to think outside the box like that and go, what can we do here to keep students engaged in music? I think it'll be challenging, but that could be a positive that comes out of it. It can be difficult for students to self-motivate in situations like this. So, but if we can figure out a way to help them with that, maybe students can realize that, hey, I don't need the teacher hand-holding me all the way through. Maybe I can take control of my own learning. School, the way we see it today, is a fairly recent development in human history. You don't see the sort of regimented system of education all the way through. I was actually homeschooled through high school, so which worked really well for me. I'm a fairly self-motivated person, so in a lot of ways, it's not exactly homeschool, but students are being subjected to that, and so I think a lot of them are falling through the cracks. But maybe a few are able to say, "Hey, wow, I don't need the teacher to help me with every step of the way. I can accomplish things on my own."
Excellent. Well, Dr. Graves, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and man, I cannot wait to be on campus and less than 2 weeks now, because I will be there because the TLC might need my help, and I also need to stick around maybe for a couple of days because my brother will be there and he's going to visit us as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I will be on campus for about 5 to 6 days,
Okay.
give or take.
Cool. Well, hopefully we'll run into each other, or let me know where you're at. We can at least say hi from a distance.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So, Dr. Graves, once again, thank you for taking your time today to be a part of this podcast. And I wish you well. And yeah, let's hope that we can see each other safely in a couple of weeks.
For sure. Good luck in your first year teaching, James Andrew.
All right. Thank you. See ya.
See ya.